welcome to season 2 of What? Why? God, from apathy to questions. And in this season, we're going to be focusing on truth as we speak to ministers, elders, and members of the church about the truth of the Bible and the truth of God as it pertains to the questions that we all have about faith. And today, I have with me Alethea Lee. We call her Lee, but it's a beautiful name, so I have to say it. Lee Hayes. And she has just so much wisdom, and I can't not talk to her without talking to her for 30, 40 minutes. Sometimes her husband's like, come on, let's go. So she is a brilliant woman, and I know she hates me saying that, but she's a smart engineer. She went to MIT, but she is a strong woman of faith as well. And I just find her so intriguing and so interesting. And so when I gave her the questions, she circled about 11 of them. And I was like, okay, let's trim it down. So we're going to focus a little bit on like smart people and science and engineering and faith, and how do you share that with people in your work. And so I'm going to basically start with the question, how you came to faith and being an engineer at the same time. What is your path to those two? Briefly, because we all know it's a long story.
I'll do my best. Because I did give it a little bit of thought, and I actually was smiling because both journeys and even how they come back together made me realize that God is always working. Yeah, and the way that He works sometimes, it doesn't follow the wisdom of man. But when you look back over it, you see how beautiful and how perfect it was. And you go, oh, that's what you were doing. So my journey of faith, I grew up in I'll call it a Christian home, very humble home, but Christian home. My mother, absolute devout believer. She really lived her life modeling Christ. And a lot to learn from her. And even when I remember her, I still say, oh, yeah, that's an area I still need to improve. Yeah, Mama, I gotcha. And
still speaking to you today.
She's still, and beautiful woman. And again, some people would say that, she wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer with respect to intellectual. But you know what? She taught me from the beginning that heart is the most important thing. And people are the most important investment. And so when I think about that, I know that was a cornerstone in my life. And when I confessed my faith before the church when I was 14 and baptized, I know that from that point forward, actually even at 12, I knew that I believed without a doubt that there was a God and that He sent Jesus to be my Savior. But at 14, I earnestly began the steady seeking of God, And of course, I'm not perfect. I've fallen off the bandwagon so many times, so many issues. But overall, God's still working things for the good. My journey to engineering is a little different. I'm of the age, I know you can't tell, but that back in those days, 35 years ago, there weren't that many women that went into engineering. And even more so, fewer women of color. And what started that journey was God gave me the talents of math and science. And I know that those are talents that He gave me. And I had started competing in science fairs, and I was winning. So that, of course, always encourages you to do more.
Yeah.
And like 8th or 9th grade, I started asking myself, what are those folks doing? Because I started noticing it was called sometimes science and engineering fairs.
Yes.
And I noticed that there was even like a wall between the science side and the engineering side. And I thought, what's going on there?
Yeah.
Because actually, even the term engineering in my household, meant that you ran a train. It didn't mean that you were someone trained in the development and the application of math and science, right? So when I realized what an engineer was and where my skills and talents were. I thought, you know what? I think God made me to design beautiful things.
I love that. I love that because it came from an outpouring of what God's given you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I tested it, switched over to the engineering side, and I won. And I thought, yeah, there's something here. And then I was watching, I think, a commercial by Ford about aerodynamics. And I've always been a curious person, and I'm like, what is that? Went to the library, looked it up, and before I know it, I started reading about lift and drag coefficients, Bernoulli's equations, new car designs, and I'm
giving them all my I have no idea what she's talking about. But it's beautiful though.
Anyway, it was the beginning of passion,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think everyone should find passion in for their career. And so, anyway, make a long story short, I started building wind tunnels, model cars.
Wow.
A 3-year journey that resulted in me going to International Science Fair, winning in my division, actually even getting my first job offer as an intern for General Motors. And I had already actually used all of that experience to, I think, give me inroads to getting into MIT. And, you know, it all just worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
The path was open. Mm-hmm.
So I was on that path of building my brain. And then, of course, life was on its way to building my heart.
Yeah.
But I always knew that both were important.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And it was just as my faith deepened and my knowledge of God deepened that I later in life learned that heart has to be overhead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that actually gets into how can a smart person be a Christian, which it's kind of the overarching question, because, you know, you're talking about all these great things that you've done and theories and things I have no concept of what she's talking about, which is fine, you know, because that's not my field. But, you know, that question comes up a lot. How can you, as a smart person, actually believe in God when we all know it's, as some people have quoted, spaghetti monsters in the sky?
That's a good phrase. I like that one. You know, actually, when I was 12, I made a little grid for myself. And on the top axis, I put God exists. On the bottom axis, I put God doesn't exist. Then I put on the x-axis, do I believe? And on the other axis,
Do I not believe?
do I not believe?
Yeah.
And then I started to ask myself those questions. So if God doesn't exist and I don't follow him, you know, you could say, you know, that's a, you know.
It's a choice.
It's a choice. It's, you know, if I do believe and God doesn't exist, maybe I still helped a few people in this life. Maybe I still lifted a few people up. And that's a life worth living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if I believe and God doesn't exist, or I should say does exist, then I've hit the jetpack.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's working for the good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if I don't believe and God exists, I'm in a world of hurt.
A world of hurt. Yeah.
So I actually thought that grid was pretty clear.
Yeah, you're making it really clear that it's really important to ask good questions. And if anybody asks you, to ask them the same good questions. And it's funny, you know, you mentioned that, and I was talking to you about this book, Truth Changes Everything, by Dr. Jeff Myers, and he was actually, one of the quotes I found was, the conversion of many people in Christianity doesn't prove that Christianity is true. It does, however, illustrate its truth. And Jesus said, if I'm not doing my Father's works, don't believe in me. Yeah. But if I am doing them and you don't believe in me, then believe my works. And that comes from John 10:37-38. And so the idea being that the way of Jesus is not true because it works because it's true.
Yes.
And so that kind of gets to that whole
Yes.
thought process there. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing. And so, yeah, I think when people talk about smart people also think outside of the box.
Yes.
And you truly do that, because I've never heard of somebody putting it on a grid. So that's beautiful. I love it.
Again, there was just something that I just said, there's something to be thinking about in this space.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of the day, that doesn't make you a believer.
Right.
Right? That doesn't make you a child of God.
Right.
But what I think it can prompt is for you to at least think about it.
Yes, start moving you in that direction.
And start seeking.
Yes, I agree.
And as you seek, then I think more and more becomes revealed to you.
Yeah, so that actually kind of moves into the next question then. So how are science and faith, or engineering and faith, how are they compatible? And how did that movement in those questions, as you're going into what people consider the very atheistic side of the world, because it is all very technical and there's always an answer for everything, or we're going to find things, which we can get into theories and all that sort of stuff, because some people think theories are true. They're not. Theories are theories.
Yes, that's true.
So how does that for you, how are science and faith compatible with regard to that?
Well, I think faith is compatible with many things. Not all things, but with many things. And when I think about science is actually about seeking the truth.
Yep.
And what I love about engineering is about applying what you've learned. And I also think faith...
It's got to be right.
Yes. And I think faith is very much that as well. So when you find out what is true, you apply it in engineering. The same with faith. When you find out God's truth, then you apply it to your lives, to the lives of the people you touch. So I think the principles of both are actually the same.
Interesting.
And I actually know it to be this way. Engineering is based on God, or what God has allowed us.
Design, his design.
Yeah, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So I think they're quite compatible. And many of my friends, the more I think they see of the world, the more they realize as well that the world does have a master design. Too many things have come together for it to be pure coincidence.
Yeah.
And they can't deny it. It's something that you feel, I think, always. But the more you come to know, the more you come to know.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, this is not an accident.
Yeah, there is something, I think one of the atheists was asked a question: if Christianity were true and you came to Christianity, what would it be about? And his thought, I'm not saying the word right, but it's basically the intricate design, how everything works together. There's no explanation for that. So it is so infinitely, minutely designed perfectly. Like the moon is where it's supposed to be.
It is. The Earth is at this angle it's supposed to be. It's the right distance from the sun. The atmosphere is perfect. Just everything. And then just how all of it works together, right?
Yeah. And all pieces of it. Yeah. So one of the reasons that I really wanted to have this conversation with you was because one of the things you're very good at is telling me how much you share it at work. And so as a scientist who says, yeah, I'm smart and I'm surrounded with a whole bunch of smart people, but you're not afraid to share your faith. So how do you do that? What do you do specifically? So people can go, I could do that.
Actually, sharing my faith is something that I actually have become more intentional about and more conscious of. It starts, though, with, first of all, feeling close to God. Whether that be in prayer or song or scripture reading or just those quiet moments, And when you feel close to God, at least for me, I feel so full that I feel like I have to share it. And when I think about all the beautiful things God's done for me, how dare I not give him the credit?
Yeah, and share it with other people.
So there is a point, though, you can realize that, if you excitedly go and tap people on the shoulder, they don't want any of that.
Let me tell you what God told me today.
Exactly. Those people are like, okay, you're one of those, and they walk away. So instead, really, I think letting your light shine. So staying calm and steady in the midst of a lot of anxiety and frustration and sometimes, anger. Right?
Yep.
Smiling, even when people know you are under pressure. Because people start to say, how come you're so calm?
Yeah.
How come you're still smiling? This is not good, right? Yeah. And you're like, no, it's not the best.
Yeah.
But you know what? I said, but we got to keep this in perspective because there's greater things at work. And after a while, people get to know you. They get to trust you. And when they see that it's authentic, then they start.
Not a one-off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then they start to want to know more.
Yeah.
Who are you, Lee? What do you do that I don't do? And
How can you be so calm in the storm, right?
And then I just openly say, well, I did start off today with prayer. Before I walked into this meeting, I prayed over all of you, prayed over this subject. Now we can begin. And I say it so matter-of-factly, so common, that people just go, okay, that's all right, that's good. And then when we start to make that positive progress, people are like, this is really good. And, everybody in their life faces a moment when they just don't know what else to do, or they're so down that just everything looks bleak. And at those points in time, God actually tapped me to call them or to show up. And then sometimes maybe for them to even call me. And then for me to listen and talk to them and then pray with them. And by the way, when you start to do that with a few folks, the word gets out.
I'm sure it does.
Then people start to say, hey, you got a problem, you go call Lee.
I love that.
And again, it's because God is working.
Yeah.
And
you're his open vessel. And I think that's what it is, right? It is, if you're always, I think we get way too scared about sharing at work and sharing maybe even at the grocery store. If I'll pray for you. Are you feeling okay? Like, you can walk up on somebody and putting your groceries on the cart and going to get them checked out, and that person could be having a bad day, and you notice something and you say something. Yes. So yeah, that's really great. I love all of that.
And I was just thinking about that when we were talking. I have never met a person that I said, I will pray for you. Not a single one that said don't. Do you hear me? Not a single one around the world.
Wow. That is wonderful. Yeah, because she goes all over the world.
9 times out of 10, they say thank you and smile, and I know that they mean it.
Yeah.
Because they feel it, right?
Yeah.
You don't just say it dryly. You say it with real emotion.
Well, and it means that you actually do care about them.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. I actually have Post-its and a prayer book. And so then when people are there, I'm like, oh, wait, let me add you to the list. I got you down. And, when I'm good, I actually go back and I even list how God answered those prayers.
Oh, that's awesome. So I hope you were listening, because Lee had a lot of gold in that. And I thank you so much for watching today at our opening of season 2 as we work on the truth of God in our lives, and how sharing the truth really is much simpler than I think we make it out to be. Don't let the devil and the lies tell you that you are not capable and not good enough, because in Jesus we are. So anyway, thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Please remember to like and share this video if it meant something to you or if you know somebody needs to hear this message from God.